All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking about real music in real time for a few real people out there just like you and just like me. All right, first, thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Please watch the videos. Patreon, YouTube memberships, revenue is I'm just squeaking by, right along the poverty line here. So if you can spare a buck or two on Patreon, that would be very much appreciated. I'm going to be talking about Rick Beato's glorious takedown of the music industry. And his video, which people send me stuff all the time. I typically don't watch the videos, not to say that I don't want to watch them. I just don't have the time. In this particular instance, I actually watched this from start to finish because he was saying some very important things. Things, by the way, that I've talked about here on my humble little shadow band channel. All right. So anyway, before I get to that, here is Kane and her album Power Zone. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about Ches is because she's a perfect example of what the music industry does today. Kane, who sounds a lot like either Lita Ford or Vixen, Cher, Pat Benatar, more stylistically like Cher as far as the way she dresses and so forth. But she's picking up the torch of people like Lita Ford for sure. And super well-written material on this album. And yes, a real artist, a real performer, not a project band or project artist, Kane, all right? So check out Ches. She's just phenomenal. She's got a great voice. I've had her on this broadcast a couple of times, and she's just really sweet and decent, and she deserves better. All right. She's doing well, but she deserves better. So that's a lead in to where we are in the music industry today. And Rick Beato, I watched this and it was just glorious. He made some fantastic points, and he got into the weeds, got into details here. See, we probably disagree a little bit on what happened in the 90s, musically speaking. He's not as critical as the grunge era as I am, because I think grunge was mostly responsible for the change in direction. And the record labels were responsible for that prior to the 1996 Communications Act, which created all of these great monopolies, not great as in good, but great as in large. And you had, Cumulus and all of these companies out there that were buying up radio stations. And they had so many radio stations that they just couldn't program them individually. So you had to have a central hub. You had to have a command center where some smart person would tell them all what to play. And so all of that radio individuality that we once loved went out the window. Even Sirius XM, which I listen to, ends up playing the same crap every other day. I listen to the bridge. I listen to certain things over there. And I'm like, okay, you guys played this song yesterday. I mean, you've got a super deep catalog. And plus, you're trying to bridge all these different things together. That would certainly open it up for album tracks and just different things that you don't hear on the radio anymore. They take a few risks, but they don't go where FM radio used to go. So anyway, you can thank Bill Clinton for the Communications Act in 1996. That's one of the things that they brought up, which I think a lot of people forget about. By 1996, the grunge apocalypse is at its zenith. Beato, again, tends to like bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam. I do not. Okay, I do not. That was a thorn in my palate, my musical palate, when I heard those bands. And a lot of people, because I worked with them, they got out of the business because they didn't like the direction of the music. Many went over to country because country was thriving and country was picking up the slack when it came to understandable lyrics, uh, decent melodies, fun songs that you can drive around to. I mean, put on Third Rock from the Sun by Joe Diffie, and you'll think to yourself, man, this is a fun song. It's a good song. And all of the fun in rock and roll went out the window at that point. I'm sorry, whether you like glam rock or glam metal or not, at least there was still some fun going on there. Some would say it's misogynistic and it's, I don't know. I mean, those are arguments that you can make about the lyrics, but the melodies themselves were typically very upbeat, not a lot of minor key things, like things that you can just tap your toes to, right? And crank it up in the car, roll down the window. I don't know. I just can't see like cranking up Pearl Jam and getting some Ginsu knives out to end your life. You know, it just that's kind of what that music does to me. When I hear it, I go, no, I really want to cheer up at this point. So I think that's something that Beato doesn't really address. All right. And I've always said, okay, so people come along and they say, well, grunge is the best, man. That's why it took over. All right. Well, prove it then. Allow everything else that was big prior to grunge compete with grunge. Don't tell programmers, yeah, that's out. Nobody likes that anymore. You had people upstairs, as Tom Petty used to say, who are saying, no, you want to be cool, right? You don't want to be playing Danger, Danger. You don't want to play Firehouse. Are you crazy? Come on. And that was, I use those two examples because that was the transition time. The early 90s, like 90, 91, 92, that is a weird time. That is a memory hold period of time where you had all these great metal-ish bands, AOR bands, whatever you want to call them, coming out. Mr. Big, they were another example. And then all of a sudden they had a career in 1992. And then after that, they didn't have a career anymore. I think they did a Cat Stevens cover for 93. And then is it Wild World, right? And that was it. They were done. And everybody else who came along, there's this great band called The Storm. Kevin Chalfant is the singer. Ross Valerie playing bass from Journey. The great Josh Ramos playing guitar. That was around for like a week, and then it just went away. Fantastic album. Everything changed, and the record labels were mostly responsible for that. So that's one thing they didn't really cover in this video. So the joy of mainstream rock, as I've put down in my notes here, the joy of it, you have to go back to a pre-1991 context, because after that, it gave birth to a post-dark, shadowy, self-pity, hate oneself and everything around you. Typically, those are the lyrics. Hate yourself and hate everything, and that's it. Okay? I mean, Ugly Kid Joe, but, you know, amplified. I don't know how to really communicate that. And it's still going on today. Those early days of that movement, that era, are still with us today when it comes to subject matter in these songs. Now, one thing that Beato, and he had another gentleman on, and I didn't really focus on him, but they were talking about the communal radio experience. This is something that I've brought up here a few times, where I say, you know, we all used to hear the same songs at the same time, and we'd all get into that music. Let's say it was 1981, and we were cruising around, and we were listening to something, and we all collectively remember that moment, right? We remember when Thriller wouldn't leave the charts in 83, sorry, wouldn't go away. It would just, song after song, they're going to release another single. I cannot believe it. Pretty Young Thing is out now, you know, and now you've got whole videos. Was it Paul Jackson Jr. telling you about his guitar ideas and so forth, and people are very interested because, again, you built this incredible album, whether you like Thriller or not, But everybody who was around at the time, they're always going to say, man, Born in the USA was so big. Dire Straits, remember? Just huge, money for nothing. And it just, I mean, those flashpoints, where an album takes over, and you can go back to the 70s, obviously, with Hotel California and Rumors, and these albums that just wouldn't go away because people love the music so much. And by the way, the record label's like, hey, we released a song, we're going to release another song. Hysteria by Def Leppard. They released like how many singles off of that? And then they had stuff playing on rock stations that wasn't on top 40. So again, you had that communal radio experience where you were all together listening. And that's how many years ago now? Well, some of us who turned over to country or alternative pop in the 90s, there was some of that communal radio experience still over there, but it was slowly breaking down. By the time you get into the 2000s, it's pretty much gone. Of course, the people who are younger, they may feel a closeness to, Matchbox 20 or whatever band was big for a while. I mean, I hear that stuff and I go, yeah, that wasn't so bad in hindsight. It's better than the grunge stuff. But again, it doesn't elicit the same feeling that I had during the 80s and up until about, the fall of 1992, I think is when things really started to unravel. And then it unraveled quickly. So I agree that that's a huge part of what once was the radio experience. So the world kind of has gone mad with streaming, right? That's another issue here. They briefly mentioned Napster, but this idea that, hey, I'm not going to go buy an album. I'm just going to go stream it. So technically, a radio station now can be you, right? You don't need a real radio station. You can be the radio station. You can program your phone and put all these songs on a playlist and then hit a button and it'll just keep playing, and you Bluetooth it to a speaker somewhere and you're listening to your own radio station and you're really proud. You've programmed your favorite music. Thus, you don't have a DJ talking to you like in the old days, which, again, being a former DJ, I'm going to stick up for DJs, right? So long as they're not just doing community bulletin board things or talking about, what the Kiwanis Club is up to today, back selling the music like we used to do. That was so-and-so with their brand new so-and-so song. Man, was that good. You'll hear that again in 3 hours, The top 40 station, you'll hear it in an hour, maybe an hour and a half if we're really pushing the limits here. But that experience is gone. You don't have those voices out there who are into the music. They're into what the monopoly says. They have whole programs devoted to your health, right? That use music as window dressing. John Tesh, the guy who plays the keyboards, and I don't know. He's a good guy. I don't have a problem with John Tesh, but he does this whole show where he's just reading from medical journals what you can do to improve your lifespan and how you can exercise more and eat more broccoli and so forth. And here's Sheena Easton. It's like, huh? But they don't say here's Sheena Easton. They just play music around his diatribes about health things. So again, this is where we're at now, because a lot of these people getting older, it's like, yeah, I like the music, and boy, this really helped me. Now I've really cut down on my sugar intake. I'm walking 8 miles a day. Thank you, John Tesh. I couldn't have figured this out without your help. And I got to hear some great music along the way. So, but that's so like, I don't know, it's 180 degrees different from being enthusiastic, like radio stations that would break bands. Now, they mentioned this. In Boston, I had WBCN, one of the greatest radio stations in the history of the world. They broke bands like U2. They broke them. They played songs before anyone else. And not only did they play them, they beat them into the ground. And then if they put out more music, they'd beat that into the ground, and they would tell people about it. They'd interview people. And this is how you learned. This is how you got excited and enthusiastic about the music. And then there are other radio stations around WBCN that did similar things up in that area. 94.5 WCOZ, that was another great radio station in Boston, had a much shorter lifespan because, again, you had a lot of buyouts. You had people come along and say, I can make more money doing this other format. And so you lose, right? You lose your radio station, but sure enough, another rock station would pop up somewhere else, or you would have 2 or 3 alternatives. Typically, the market was saturated. And so, again, if you lost one rock station, you're like, okay, but I've got this other one over here that I like a lot too. And then, of course, you could go to different markets. If you were in New England, you had Rhode Island, you had Cape, you had Boston, you had Worcester. So you had all kinds of places to listen to great music. And it's just sad how that's all gone away. You put on a radio station now, again, if you're listening in Boston, it's going to sound a lot like it sounds in Toledo or in Tucson. So there's just no individuality. If there are a few mom and pop stations left, those are the ones that have a little bit of control over what they're doing. And they're still probably doing too much focus testing. They think that the big station across the street with all of that, power, 50,000 watts, that, hey, we can't really compete with them. So we have to kind of just keep it, safe, play it safe and not do anything too crazy. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? This is when you go the craziest. You have a lower power signal, go crazy, you got 10,000 watts, bring everybody over. People want originality right now. And yeah, you got your playlist, but you get in the car and you sync in your phone, or you're doing this, you're doing that, and you got screens now, you got all this crap. And I'm thinking, it would be good just to hit a button and have somebody entertain me. Just entertain me, play some great music and back sell, front sell, do what you need to do to keep me engaged with it. Make the commercial breaks exciting, but not too long. But there is a way to do that. No, in today's market, it's we don't talk about the music. And when we play commercials, you can tell that the commercials end up being like the star of the show. Like if you've got 4 or 5 commercials in a row, those commercials end up being like the thing where you hear all of the talking. So you're thinking to yourself subliminally, okay, they don't really care that much about the music because they're not really talking about the music. And they haven't been talking about the music for decades now. And that's really a tragedy. So anyway, getting back to Beato, he also talked about how artists can't get a big advance for albums. In fact, that's almost completely gone away. And that's been true since the 90s. All right. Things started to go downhill quickly. Once streaming came in, and blame Napster, blame Spotify now, and Spotify doesn't pay out. And the CEO of Spotify says to the artists, hey, if you don't like that, make more music. Like if you just put out music, like even if the music sucks, just keep putting it out there. And that's going to make a difference because more people are just going to randomly stumble on it. This is why David Lee Roth is doing alternative versions of Van Halen classics. So more people will stumble on it, and he might earn, I don't know, $10 in a month for putting that out there. Probably not even that much. I don't know. Streaming is not lucrative. It's killing the artist. The only good news, if there is any good news, and I think Beato touched on this, is that any artist anywhere can go direct to the public with no filter. Oftentimes, record labels would pick the wrong songs. They would pick the wrong single. And this is why people like me, other programmers, would be like, hey, you guys sent me this song. Track number 7 is amazing. What do you think of that? And they would say, well, that's not the one we want to push. And I'm like, well, that's the one I'm going to play. I'll play your song every so often, but I'm going to play this other song. And that's why you had songs like Black Velvet by Alana Miles go to number one, because somebody somewhere said, you know what? The song you're sending me is okay, but this Black Velvet tune, amazing. That's the one we're going to play. And the DJ ends up being right. And, that's the kind of thing that used to happen all the time. And there's no market for that anymore. It's really tragic. So again, give Beato credit. His video was very well done. And he and I disagree on a couple of things. And I mentioned grunge being one of them. I think grunge was part of that entire equation. Again, let it compete. Poison is still out there. Def Leppard is still out there. Let all of this amazing grunge music compete and coexist, right? Doesn't matter, because we've been essentially brainwashed now for 30 years that you can only put out dark music, mostly about dark topics, and that's cool. But if you get a little too cheesy, right, people are going to say, well, I can kind of hear that in my head now. I'm humming it as I'm driving the car around. I'm thinking about it. It's subliminal. It stays in my head. And that's what good music used to do. It no longer does it. Anyway, wrapping this video up, Kane, good music, folks. Power Zone. Go check it out. Melodic, and she's great. She's a real artist and completely ignored here in the United States. My number one album, I'll throw this at you too, for last year, Voyage, a real band on tour all the time, playing the music of Journey, but they've got their own album. Number one last year, completely ignored by the American media and the American press, the music press, that is. And I just keep on trucking, folks. If you can support the channel, please do it via Patreon or through YouTube memberships. Also, pray for peace in the Middle East and around the world. And like I always say, in your own heart. I will be back. See you then.